Hello and welcome to Automotive EV. My name is Peter Wooding and it's my pleasure to welcome Sanjiv from Chep, who's actually going to be giving us an overview of the 10th Battery in Focus meeting that they had this last week. Please ask as many questions as you want using the question panel, and we will endeavour to answer them all. So without further ado, it's over to you, Sanjiv. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Peter. So I'm just going to share the slide deck. Okay. Okay, Peter, can you confirm we can see that clearly?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Great. Okay, great. Thanks, Peter. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you all, depending on obviously where you're located in the world. So similar to my session back in September, I'm here today to provide you with a summary of our last Battery in Focus working group session, which was held on the 1st of December, and of course, virtually. Again, we had great attendance with 28 delegates from all areas of the automotive industry. And in fact, we reached a milestone as this was our 10th session. Before I summarize some of the key areas we discussed, for those of you who are not familiar with the forum, let me briefly explain the objective of this working group. Our vision and aspiration is to bring together thought leaders from all aspects of the automotive and supply chain industries to discuss and share knowledge to tackle what is fast becoming one of the biggest challenges of the entire industry. How do we develop and implement a safe, efficient, and sustainable supply chain for lithium-ion batteries used in all types of electric vehicles? By bringing together a group of experts with this common interest, we have created something quite unique. We started the initiative back in April 2018, and the first 6 sessions were held in different locations around Europe. One particular highlight being our 6th session held at Frankfurt Airport, where Airbridge Cargo gave us the first-hand experience of witnessing air transportation challenges of batteries. Since the 7th conference, we of course have had to move to a virtual setup. We normally focus on 4 to 5 specific topics during each session. And on this slide, you can see details of some of the topics we have covered and the partners involved. I would particularly like to call out PwC Autofacts and Kuehne+Nagel, who have been strong contributors and partners throughout our journey on these sessions. As well as the partners that have led sessions, we have had a huge variety of attendees contributing to the discussions, and the list is growing with every event. We were delighted to welcome both Volvo and Krasan for the first time to the session last week. That's enough about the history of Battery in Focus. Now I would like to share with you an overview of some of the key topics that we discussed during our last session. Firstly, as with all our events, we started with a market update from PwC Autofacts. The year 2020 will be remembered for many things, of course, but for the automotive industry, it is the year of turning the curve with electric vehicles, driven by a multitude of significant model launches targeted at making EVs more mainstream, some of which you can see on the slide. And as you can see from the list of upcoming launches by the end of next year, there is a huge wave coming from all the major European manufacturers. So across the whole year, we are going to see so many vehicle launches that is obviously going to increase consumer choice. As you can see on the slides here, this is not even an exhaustive list. There are lots and lots of launches coming up. And the numbers speak for themselves. Despite the overall downturn in overall sales, due to the pandemic mainly, the year-to-date increase of 19% globally. And if we compare September figures to last year, an increase of 91%. And you can also see that is the European market that is pushing global EV demand. The European market has taken over the lead role in terms of EV sales, both in absolute sales and total market share. In fact, in 2020, it is anticipated that pure battery electric vehicles, so that doesn't include conventional hybrids, will for the first time exceed 1 million vehicle sales. Total market share of electrified vehicles is by far the largest in Western Europe of all main markets. In Western Europe, the lion's share is still hybrids, but we are seeing a significant increase of share of battery electric vehicles. Even in China, the market share of battery electric vehicles is lower than in Europe. In the US, it is still seen as a luxury item. Cars are comparatively cheap in the US. Having a car is not much of a financial effort. As a result, we are seeing the effects of this growth on manufacturing. Factories for EVs and plug-in hybrids are working full throttle, trying to produce as much as they can. Some buyers are advancing their purchasing decision because they want to take advantage of government subsidies that have a limited time frame. The current bottleneck is not selling vehicles, but the limit is in the production capacity and the supply chain that serves it. This is also bringing significant change to the manufacturing landscape, specifically in Europe. For example, Volkswagen converting its Emden plant to a fully electric plant, and the Hanover plant is undergoing full refurbishment to become fully electric also. The conventional fuel-burning LCE vehicles will now be pushed out to manufacturing in Poland. If we see this continued rate of growth, for sure, the purchasing teams in the OEMs are going to be looking for more efficient, cheaper, safer, and reliable supply chains. Over the next 5 years, we are looking at 3 to 4 times the growth, and therefore lithium-ion battery demand. Battery technology is advancing rapidly, not just in terms of performance, but also in terms of cost reduction. There's always pressure in the automotive industry to reduce prices and therefore costs as they work on increasingly tight margins. It is expected that obsolescence, redesign, and update of battery systems is going to be much more frequent in these new EVs than updates of engines or other hardware. The next topic we discussed was that of the recent Ford Cougar plug-in hybrid battery issue, led by Matthias Krings from Ford. This was purely a discussion, but I thought it was important that we share the insights with you today. So there aren't any slides on this topic. There has been a lot of coverage in the media, so I'm sure you are aware of the issue. But to summarize, this started around 3 months ago, when Ford received a handful of reports about vehicles that, when being charged, caught fire. Does the issue lie with the design of the battery? Is it something that was caused by the assembly process? Or has the manufacturer of the cells or the battery modules caused the issue? This issue brought the entire product development team together with the manufacturing teams together to discuss both the battery design and manufacture and bringing it into question. Our discussions were centered around what did Ford learn from this incident, and what were those key takeaways and how they are going to adapt for these eventualities in the future. The first key challenge was how to transport and ship these faulty and potentially dangerous batteries so that they could be assessed. Ford needed to get to the root cause of this issue in days, not weeks, and speed was of essence. Specialist emergency packaging was required at very short notice, which of course was very, very expensive. The root cause was quickly identified as being the actual cells, and as soon as it became clear, a decision was made to exchange all batteries in all plug-ins that Ford had produced in Europe. The rollout of the replacement batteries is set to commence shortly, and this will be done by shipping new batteries to dealerships and organizing the swap of the batteries at these dealerships. Ford is now organizing a dismantling production line in one of their facilities. When dismantling thousands of these batteries, they now face the challenge of disposal, which needs to be a balanced process with dismantling so as not to experience bottlenecks. One of the other key learnings has been the importance of the so-called second-tier materials used for battery production. Limitations in the supply of these low-cost but vital components is threatening the production lead times. A change in planned inventory levels is definitely going to be a result of this learning. No one in the industry is prepared to have such a large quantity of batteries that need recycling or disposal at this time, because no one expected a product quality failure. And it is bound to happen again. Manufacturers certainly need better control of a recall situation in terms of their agreement with their suppliers, an established process, and very importantly, a qualified supply chain with a qualified transportation and packaging system. Next on the agenda, we ran a small poll for the attendees about standardized packaging, a topic that has often come up through the Battery in Focus sessions over the last couple of years. The first question we asked was, do you think we can create industry standardized packaging for battery cells and modules? And as you can see from the response, the resounding reply was yes. This, of course, is a topic very close to mine and Chep's heart, but saying yes, it can be done is easy. It is a different challenge to actually make it happen. And collaboration across the industry is going to be the key to creating standardized packaging that will then benefit everyone in the industry. We then asked a similar question, but this time about the assemblies, the full battery packs. And the results was almost the reverse. No, this is something that we have already, again, a number of us have already investigated. And as these battery packs are now becoming an integral part of the structure of the vehicle, due to their size and weight, they are very much bespoke to each type of vehicle, making standardized packaging a real challenge and highly unlikely. The final session we discussed was around raw materials, and specifically how the underinvestment in raw materials is the biggest risk to the electric vehicle supply chain. And this session was presented by Matt Fernley from Battery Materials Review. EVs are very important with regards to battery demand, but we must not forget they are not the only driver. Stationary storage battery demand is potentially going to grow faster than EVs, but of course at a much lower scale. But it will still contribute up to 15% of total battery demand by 2030. On top of that, there's consumer demand for batteries. Excuse me. I'm going to take a sip of water. Sorry about that. Frog in the throat. On top of that, there's consumer demand for batteries, with the number of markets within this area growing extremely rapidly, faster than EVs with stationary storage. The issue with EVs is that at the moment, the median selling price is significantly above the median selling price of internal combustion engine vehicles, which is currently around £20,000. If EVs want to become mainstream, the prices must come down. And batteries play a major part, a major component in the total EV cost. And in turn, raw materials are a major component of that battery cost. You may have recently heard Tesla have announced that battery prices will continue to fall over the next 4 to 5 years. But this is consistently being challenged. There's concern now over the direction battery prices will take beyond the next 2 years. They may be flat, or they may even move upwards. This would have significant knock-on effects on the profitability of battery manufacturers and, in turn, the profitability of OEMs. There was a lot of data shared about battery chemistry, and I will not even attempt to do this justice. I'm by no means a chemist. But in essence, as the demand on battery performance, cost, and availability increases, so does the need to look at new and different materials and chemistry. But this requires investment to develop raw material projects to produce these materials. The development in raw materials takes longer, far longer, typically 3 to 5 years to start to develop new capacity. And as you can see on the chart on the right-hand side, certainly over the course of this year, the diminishing investment in this area, we are already potentially facing a major supply-demand gap. We are coming off the back of a period of substantial underinvestment in material supply, which is going to have significant ramifications in terms of this supply-demand gap that is opening up. Potentially, it could mean substantial increase in prices of raw materials and therefore batteries and therefore EVs. So what are the potential solutions? Well, OEMs could raise EV prices, but then of course this will affect demand and sales. They could take the hit and continue to sell EVs for longer periods at the higher prices. But again, how long will this last for? This will undoubtedly affect demand. Ultimately, though, someone, well, not just someone, but a group of people and many parts of the industry need to step in and start investing in raw material projects. You also need to decentralize the supply chain to make battery production more sustainable. A lot of the negative carbon impact of battery production comes from the fact that the bulk of processing in China uses coal fuel power. And there's a lot of shipping. For instance, shipping raw materials, which can be significant, can have a significant impact coming from places like Chile, Australia to China, and then back out to wherever the end market is. If setting up supply chains in Europe, they have to minimize the inter-region shipping. And on top of that, they can use renewable power, which is clean. There is substantial opportunity to develop raw material supply chain and integrated supply chain in Europe. A fully integrated supply chain based in Europe has the potential to be substantially cleaner for the whole battery process. But there is a need of much more investment in upstream, which is not seen at the moment. And finally, we discussed the topic of recycling. Is that a possible source for reuse in terms of production of new EV batteries? Well, the average life of an EV battery is about 10 to 12 years, but will probably extend over time. The bulk of those end-of-life batteries will not be available to recycle until the latter part of this decade. And given the growth of demand for EVs, the batteries that are available to recycle for production from the last couple of years will be irrelevant compared to the amount of materials the industry will be using. So that concludes the summary of the topics that we discussed last week. But before I finish and open up to answer any questions, what is the future for Battery in Focus? Well, it's still going from strength to strength. So, of course, we are going to continue with our European events. But I'm excited to announce that in early February, we will have our inaugural event in the US. And we already have companies like Tesla and Lucid sign up to take part in the discussions. And then following on from that, we are aiming to have our first event in China in Q2 2021. So really excited to have shared this with you today. I'll now hand back to Peter, and we'll take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjiv. A couple of points at the beginning. Looking at the situation, obviously, regrettably, that Ford ended up with, how can we sort of build in to address those challenges? Because if it's a cell challenge and there's lots of different sizing of different parts, how are we going to successfully not just deliver the new cells for dealerships to fit and train them, but the sheer volume of what's going to be going back, and where is it going to be going back to?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is the challenge, because no one expected something of this scale to happen so soon. And look, the challenge is still there. It's certainly the resolution has not taken place, but it's all being done very reactively at the moment. So look, we learned a lot in the discussion last week, but we will continue to have the discussions, and Ford have been very willing to share information so that they can help the industry in terms of preparing for these eventualities, because undoubtedly these will happen. Of course, every effort will be made not to have this, but there's no way we can ever guarantee that we're not going to see issues with batteries and recalls in the future. But again, putting the process in place, I think is one of the key elements, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure that there is a robust process. But then what is the infrastructure that goes to support that? And again, I think there's lots of opportunity for different elements of the industry to become involved in helping support this. I mean, we've had, for example, Warwick Manufacturing Group attend the sessions before, and they're specifically doing research around end-of-life battery management. But I think what this has brought to light, this event has brought to light, is look, this is happening now, or it's around the corner. I think people have seen that, thinking that, oh, this is something we have to resolve in a few years' time. That's certainly not the case.
But it is happening now, unfortunately, and it's happening in a market that's a fraction of what it's going to be. And when you look at, and I think it's admirable what Ford are doing, and the opportunity to achieve this and get the resolution in within the first quarter, let's say. But they're not huge producers of hybrid. Yeah, and if you compound that challenge, now we're really looking at a supply chain sort of major issue. And are we going to need to have set up sort of, and not that they're not set up, but really strong battery sort of resolution sort of action groups that can look very carefully. We're going to go to no ICE within UK in 10 years. Yeah. Now we're talking of millions of vehicles coming, and hybrid only lasting that 5 afterwards. So what's your thoughts of where it's going to go?
Yeah, look, I think not just in terms of managing situations like this, but as I mentioned earlier, around creating standardized packaging solutions, for example. This is about the industry collaborating together, and I think there's so much that can be achieved if on common issues and sharing of that knowledge and the pain points that the industry is facing in total, um, yeah, that is going to be the key to making sure that we set up a resilient and robust supply chain for the future, which inevitably will help everybody. It's going to be for the benefit of all. I think we've got to prevent this sort of silo mentality, that we are potentially facing, where everyone sort of keeps their cards very close to their chest and works on things. Obviously, it's a competitive industry. We understand that, and there's certain things that cannot be shared. But I think in terms of specifically supply chain, area of supply chain, and management and setting up these, like you say, that this whole system on how we manage situations like recalls. um, we need businesses to collaborate, because they're all going to need it.
Okay, there's a question in from an Alex Tan. Besides recycling from EV batteries, can recyclers get their supply battery manufacturers? I heard that rejection rates are high. You've probably got that clip in, but question.
Yeah, not sure how to answer. I mean, it's something that's being researched. Yeah, there is definitely a need for a recycling industry to be set up. But I don't know, Peter, do you have any particular thoughts on that yourself?
I'm still on. I thought I'd muted myself. I think there are sort of systems and initiatives in place, and they will continue to grow, because obviously at the moment we've not been looking at doing it at all. And for want of a better expression, the penny's dropped now on the fact that we are going seriously diesel and petrol. So there will obviously be a certain amount, I would have thought, facilities in order to be able to build into that. But also, one of the areas that bothers me slightly is the length of supply chain from the battery manufacturer to where the vehicle is. And we're going for which we should be, a greener planet, and have cars where they have zero emissions running through.
Yeah.
But how much have we created with this length of journey to get them where they should be?
A lot. A lot. I mean, I mentioned that earlier, right? So a lot. We've got raw materials coming in from places like Chile, Australia into China. Batteries being produced in China and then coming across to Europe. We certainly do not want to create that same length of transportation when we come to recycling. And of course we will need to, but yeah, there is of course an increased focus now in terms of localize as the volume increases. Yes, we are seeing a more regionalized approach, a localized approach for manufacturing, and that was something that was going on anyway. And I think layering on top of that, what we've seen happening this year with the pandemic, I think it's just highlighted the fact that having localized and regional sourcing strategy is vital to businesses.
What would be your personal wish in terms of the collaboration more from vehicle manufacturers? We know you can't change the design of an entire vehicle to fit everything. Yeah. On the other hand, from a skateboard design perspective within a manufacturer, you can actually sort of shrink the actual battery in line with the platform that would suit different derivatives or different models. But is anyone talking about a way of sort of having that plan but only have to replace parts? I don't know.
Well, there are. I mean, obviously, battery in focus is one of those attempts to sort of bring in, but it's a good forum, and we discuss a lot of meaningful topics, and we share a lot of knowledge. But what we are trying to do as a business is really sort of encourage our customers and people in the industry to collaborate more. But it's huge. I mean, obviously the scale of the industry is absolutely, massive. So, we have to. It's going to be difficult to do this, certainly at the scale we probably need to. But it's through events like, you know, your event, Automotive EV, and other events and other collaborations going across that, we should make those collaborations happen. So my really wish is that we get the major players attending events like Battery in Focus, but other similar types of initiatives, collaboration initiatives more regularly, and really take a affirmed approach that is a key part of their future strategy.
Is it time to be entering into the design element of the vehicle earlier and try to influence on a design? And
yes, I think so. Look, we've always tried to do that. Supply chain and packaging certainly always becomes to be a bit of an afterthought. I think one of the challenges here is that, look, I mean, first of all, EVs are they're completely different challenge. So OEMs are still learning. As you can see, every EV that comes out, it's got innovation in there. They're bringing the cost down, bringing technology up. So they've got a big challenge still. So sort of then layering on top of that, I think in terms of saying, well, can you consider packaging? I think it will be a challenge. But what we can do is, I think certainly maybe not at the design stage, but once designs are finalized, is to start thinking about supply chain, transportation, and packaging at that early stage. Because as we're seeing at the moment, it's still, yes, we've turned a corner, but it's still gathering pace. So there's still going to be lots and lots of new product coming to the market. So having those conversations early, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, I know you wanted to keep in a tight schedule, especially as we're going through Brexit and everything else. But for people, thanks very much, Sanjiv. Any further questions for Sanjiv? Please feel free to keep posting them on, and we will obviously forward to you, Sanjiv, or different parts within your team. Thanks very much for also being able to attend this week, given what you might have had to do. And thank you for your support. Everybody should try to sort of follow much stronger the battery from a recycling perspective and also from a supply chain perspective, because there are lots of discussions to be had moving forward. So thank you. Great initiative. I remember the first Battery in Focus group and was looking at photographs of it on your site a while ago. So and it's growing from strength to strength. So thank you everybody who's watched live. Anybody who watches on demand, again, you have the ability within the site to be able to post questions and we will forward them on. So take care, Sanjiv. Thank you.
Great. Thank you,
and
Peter.
a great, how you managed to pull 4-ish hours into 20 odd minutes, I don't know, but well done.
Right.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.